Yeah, I think we'll stop there actually. Hello everybody, how are you? Yeah. Yeah, I got another talk type video today. It's a bit different, this one, but it's something that's been on my mind for a while. It's something I've suffered with for a long time as well. I just think I should really just get this out in the open, because I think there's a few of us actually sort of share this experience, but either don't want to admit to it, or it's a taboo subject, or you know, it's kind of like yeah, you know, because it might just come across as sort of pity fish. Is it pity fishing, pity searching, or something like that? And that's not really what I want to talk about. Yeah, so I get to the point. I mean, the whole thing is about musicians and anxiety. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, you know, in a lot of music, you know, like, I mean, I was trying to get that across in this this opening piece. You know, like the whole thing, you know, like the blues, you know, like the flamenco as well, and like in some sort of really deep classical music, you know, you do get this sort of sense of like despair and hopelessness, and what have you. And so there's something in the, you know, we're getting a bit deep now, aren't I? But getting, you know, there's something in all of us that has these moments of just feeling the blues, and don't really know enough about it. So why am I talking about this? Well, I mean, in my own case, I mean, it was like Thursday. I mean, I've been in a new job for about 6 months, and then I was in like a temporary job, but it was one of those like rolling contract things. You know, yeah, we'll renew it. Yeah, we'll renew it. And that was like the first job I'd had like since the pandemic. And in Leicester, the way it was, it's like the East Midlands of England anyway. They kept extending it. You know, we're getting these sort of mini lockdowns as well. When everybody else was coming out of it, we were in another one, because there was like new variants and all this sort of thing. So for almost like, you know, like a couple of years, I'd sort of been, you know, like on my own really. You know, I mean, I had some friends, but a lot of the time it was just like, you know, sort of chatting over Zoom, or you know, immersing myself in YouTube, as you've probably done yourself, and not really getting a lot of you know, like social contact and you know, but you know, even before then, you know, I mean, like the things have sort of been, you know, there've been lots of tensions, you know, even before then, you know, you know, there's been some family upheavals, you know, over the last few years. I mean, I don't really want to go into them now, but you know, there's been, you know, like losses in the family, and illnesses in the family, and you know, family members suffering from dementia, and you know, stuff like that. And yeah, I know it's all going to be a bit heavy and whatnot, but if we don't talk about these things, then how are you supposed to know, you know? So anyway, and of course, you know, like YouTube's been my sort of outlet. It's not like I'm, you know, a burnt out YouTuber or whatnot. That's far from the truth. It's more the case of like, you know, YouTube is my outlet, you know, for my creative sort of input. But you know, like throughout a few of the jobs now, I mean, it's kind of just been fine. You know, you tell people about, you know, yeah, oh yeah, you know, I got some new guitar stuff over the weekend. Oh wow! Or oh, I made this video. Oh wow! Or I wrote this song. Oh wow! Or you know, or I transcribed this piece of music. Or you know, and a lot of the time, the rebuttal to that would be somebody at work saying, you know what? Outside of work, I've got no creative interest whatsoever. And you think, right? Because it just seems to be, you know, like people would just be either, you know, just, was it going down the pub? Maybe if they were younger, they might be going out clubbing or something. Maybe playing football, something like that. But the idea of sitting down and learning an instrument, or sitting down transcribing a like a piece of cello music or a piece of violin or piano music, or going to see like the Philharmonia. There's like they got a residency. They're classical orchestra. They got a residency up the road from here. So the idea of doing that, or like talking about like art history and stuff, or like philosophy, or even like some of the those more profound episodes of like things like Star Trek and whatnot, or etc etc. And you're just finding that a lot of the people just don't have those sorts of interests at all. So who are you going to tell them to? I mean, I can put it in a video, but again, I know that already. Some of you are perhaps going to start to turn off, think, "Oh, I don't know if this is for me," because and I'm not pity searching or whatever that phrase is. I mean, if you want to turn off, fine. But but it's like there's all this there's all this stuff which is like which we could be we could be having like bigger discussions about things, and we're not. We sort of just seem to be dwelling on like the day to day. So then anyway, this is kind of bringing. I mean, I'm sort of starting to go a bit around the houses, but so this is bringing me into like like last week. I mean, they did that video about Queen, at the end of the Magic Tour, and how they were kind of like burnt out, and they'd been burnt out before, and it was they was interviews with like Brian May and whoever, saying how they sort of felt they'd been on this treadmill and album tour, and hadn't really had a break and whatnot. And but I was kind of feeling that without being I mean, I'm not classing myself as being a mega rich, mega famous rock star or anything, but I kind of felt I've been on that sort of similar treadmill myself, where it's sort of like been even before the pandemic, go to work, get paid, come home again, try and do some music or something creative in the evening, and almost like it's been sort of shoehorned, and like almost like didn't seem I'm saying. I'm not saying there's not avenues for sort of exploring those ideas, as I was saying, because most people at work, they're not going to be interested. So that's been part of it. So then of course like during the day, you're doing of course you're commuting, and you're mapping your day out, and then you start falling into those traps, like your next cup of coffee, or your next right, well, I can have got a 10-minute break coming up now, or lunchtime's coming up soon, or and just almost like not necessarily clock watching, but just marking your time like that, and just finding that everything else just seems to be secondary to this whole just like this whole sort of Groundhog Day type existence of just going through the motions, and then trying to shoehorn music and stuff into the evening, and then maybe if you're getting a band together, then you're trying to find people who can play on your level, or even people who want to play with you, but perhaps at a sort of slightly higher level than you are, so they're going to push you, and then trying to find people who are into the sort of music that I'm into, which it's quite a sort of range of stuff that that I like, and it's but trying to find so anyway, that's that. But yeah, as I was saying, like on Thursday, that a lot of my jobs involves being on the on the phone to people, and if you're a person of conscience, like when you do a lot of thinking, you do have like high standards for yourself, and you expect similar standards from other people as well. But for some reason I was on the phone to this lady, shall we say, and and she was just getting more and more irate, and I'm trying to, like, calm her down, and doing my best, and to try and resolve this problem, and she's just getting more and more angry, and of course I'm sort of like, doing this whole Groundhog Day thing, and I'm thinking, well, I don't, maybe I should just put the phone down, and So anyway, so then I had this anxiety attack, as you might gather. And now, I don't know if you ever had this, but I'm going to describe the feelings, because it was around sort of like 11 o'clock-ish, or just after. So I think this thing called the glycemic index, where you start to feel a bit hungry, I always advise trying to have a decent breakfast before you set out to work, but sometimes maybe if you're eating the wrong thing, or you haven't eaten enough, you get that sort of for me, like the anxiety attack, it kind of starts out like a feeling of being hungry, even if you're not, and then it kind of like spreads all the way down, through your intestines or whatever. But then it also spreads across your body, and you can just feel the like the adrenaline sort of moving into your system. And I was also finding I was getting this like mix of emotions. First of all, it was kind of like, isn't it funny we got a live one on the phone here? Going from that to feeling frustration to, anger, and then kind of like, but then just this overwhelming wash of emotion, and it was just a bit too much, and so I was just sort of like, whoa. And then I sort of, I got up, and I was shaking, and then I said to my team leader, I said, look, I can't be doing this on a day-to-day basis, and he says, well, I was going to tell you something anyway, because actually it turns out they've moved me onto a different team now, so I'm not going to be facing that particular problem. Similar problems maybe, but not that one. But we had this meeting, and then I had to explain about that sometimes I do get these anxiety attacks like this. Now it's so if you ever experience anything like this, like I've had them for a long time, so I can tell you how to regulate yourself again. One of the main ones is to start concentrating on your breathing. Like if you breathe from your diaphragm, sit upright in your chair as well, and breathe from your diaphragm, a few deep breaths, or if you get a chance, like stand up as well, have a bit of a walk around. That will help as well. Sometimes you might get this like constriction feeling in your throat too, and that's quite normal as well, but you're not choking. What you want to do is to breathe through it. It's an illusion that your mind is creating. You want to breathe through that if you can as well, and it also helps if, like, I'm not saying that you're being like a gym bunny and being sort of regular exercise all the time, but if you're going for like regular walks and you're trying to keep generally fit and trying to eat the right stuff, that's going to like that's going to help you cope with things like like blood pressure and stuff. Because like if you have one of these attacks and you have like a heart condition or something, then obviously it's going to be a bit more serious. But but having said all that, it's not sort of like we're waiting for somebody to find a cure for all this, because for me, anxiety is linked in with instinct. I still believe this, that we are instinctual creatures. I think that film 300, with Gerard Butler, that this is Sparta, all that. There's a whole bit at the start, and he's talking about, like, is he suffering from anxiety, or no? It's just heightened intuition, heightened instinct. Like a spider sense almost. That something's telling you that something's off, whether it's your working environment, or like whatever it is that's been triggering that feeling, that something is being off, and you need to take time away. And I think that's so in a way it's almost like That's my phone there going off. Yeah, but anyway, it's almost like, you know, when you sneeze, and you kind of like, you sort of feel sort of refreshed by it, or even like sometimes when you're coughing and you come out of it, it's a similar sort. I think it's a similar way for your body to start regulating, because it's built up all this, basically all this crap in your mind, which you know, which you haven't been able to deal with, and that's part of it. And the, you know, the other thing, you know, just before I close, I don't want to be going on too long about this, 'cause I am conscious of that, but it's the way that these things actually build up. You know, that because the way I see it is that we're not designed to be doing. When I say designed, it's not natural for us to be doing that whole Groundhog Day existence. You know, the same thing over and over and over again. I think that, you know, that if you're trying to improve yourself, you know, let's say you are, you know, working on things like music, and trying to push yourself, eventually you'll notice sort of changes, not only in like your playing or your confidence levels and things like that, but you'll find that the more of those changes actually come in, the more you start to change as a person. And once you've changed, you've got that contrast between the person you are now that you've learnt all this new stuff, and the person you were, you know, before you knew all that stuff. So it's not like trying to harken back to a golden age, or a time in your childhood when it was all, you know, sunshine and roses and fluffy kittens and things. It's not that at all. It's more, how do you marry where you are now with where you were? You know, that sense of change, you know, that sort of informed knowledge. And sometimes, you know, I mean, you may have like sort of flashbacks and things, you know, like when you were younger, where like some of this anxiety was kind of built up, where, you know, you were too young to understand what was going on, or you didn't actually have the answers or the confidence to sort things out. You know, I mean, I could think of, you know, I could think of a few things from my early childhood. You know, I don't want to say, you know, too much, but I do remember, you know, there was one time, you know, when I was at school, and you know, we didn't call it math in those, you just called it doing sums and multiplication and whatnot, and the teacher set these problems. I think they were actually in a book. She didn't actually set them, she just like certain pages in the book, and you had to go up, and then she would answer. Sorry, and then she would check your work, and then depending on how well you did would depend on how much she humiliated you in front of the class. And I just remember this one time, you know, I was like trying to do my work, and in front of everybody there was this like girl who got her sums wrong, and she smacked her legs in front of everybody, because in those days teachers could do that and nobody would say, sorry, that's child abuse, you can't do that. And so I saw that and I thought, I've got to get the right answer. So I started hunting around, and I got all like the counters I could, and I had the right answer anyway, but to make sure I did have the right answer, I got all these counters and I made sure I had the right answer. And then of course she comes over, Peter Quinn, what do you think you're doing? You know, why have you got all these counters? You know, and then of course, you know, because I'm only like 5 or 6 at the time, of course I'm breaking down in tears, because I'm thinking, well, if she smacked that girl's legs for getting the wrong answer, what's she going to do to me? You know, so sometimes that's you know, things like that. It's like the fear of what might happen rather than the fear of what actually does happen. You know, because like the whole, you know, the big booming voice of the teacher, it kind of it's trying to make. I mean, even though she was a big fat woman, this lady. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't mean to be sizist and all, but she was really, you know, she was a really big woman, and I think because of that, you know, like that was kind of you know, affecting her moods as well, and you know, I think, and she was just, you know, just trying to make herself look big and terrifying, because when she grew up, she was used to people being big and terrifying as well. She thought that was what it meant to be a person in charge, you know, a bully basically. And you find this a lot, you know. I mean, I don't know what it's like where you are, but in a lot of British society, you'll find that, you know, people have risen to the top through being bullies or, like, you know, harassing and you know, playing on people's weaknesses, and you know, expecting you to be a people pleaser and stuff like that. You know, I mean, there's that, you know, that phrase, yeah, going the extra mile, but they won't quote Luke's gospel at you, which is where it actually comes from. You know, the whole thing about carrying the soldier's shield an extra mile, if he orders you to carry it, you know, however far. They won't quote that at you, because that's about passive resistance. You know, they won't quote that at all. Instead, they'll demand that of you until basically you're at the point of, like, burning out. And then, you know, just on closing, there's this thing about, you know, like with men and I would say, yeah, mental health problems, anxiety, depression, codependency, bottling it up, whatever you want to call it. That whole thing about, you know, like when they talk about, you know, like with women, I don't even use this one myself, you know, what's the matter with you? Oh, nothing. Like, you know, the passive aggressive thing about, you know, getting attention from someone. With a man, it's different. You know, what's the matter with you? Oh, I'm fine. Oh, you know, he'll say he's fine, and he's not. And if you start doing that, oh, there, let me help, then he'll start fighting you. You know, so that's not the way of shaking a man out of it. That's not a way of, you know, telling a man that he actually needs help. You know, the way through that, and I can't be specific to every situation, is to be sort of more practical, you know, and use like a practical thing, to actually help him to unwind and to, you know, to then start talking about what's been bothering him, what's been building up. So I just wanted to say this because, like, you know, like with musicians, you know, like we are, you know, if we're trying to capture like moods and emotions and stuff, we are linked, you know, a lot to our to our feelings, and especially like in rock music, heavy music, in blues, flamenco, etc. You know, we are dealing with these dark feelings all the time, you know, and having to balance those with how we really feel, you know. So yeah, so I'll go on a bit, and this is slightly different than my usual videos, but